A piece of furniture is more than a utilitarian object that makes our lives more comfortable. Furniture embodies a history of the social mores, philosophy, aesthetics, politics, economics, science, and technology of the period in which it was made. By preserving examples of furniture in museums, period environments, and in our own homes, we not only learn about our ancestors' world, but are also keepers of this knowledge for future generations. This video is about preserving furniture, or more correctly, about what you can do to minimize the preventable damage to furniture in your care. Preventable damage to furniture is usually caused by one of three things. First, and perhaps the most important, is a poorly controlled ambient environment. Second is careless use, handling, and maintenance. And third, inadequate packing for transport or shipping. This video will briefly discuss the first two of these three aspects of preventable damage, beginning with the environment. There is an optimal environmental mix of light levels, temperature, and humidity for most things. For furniture, the perfect climate is about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 50% relative humidity, dark, and anaerobic. Obviously, this is not conducive to human use of the objects. So, a reasoned compromise must be reached. Probably the easiest issue to resolve is damage from excessive light levels. What we normally call light is really just a very narrow portion of the phenomenon called electromagnetic radiation. Light interacts with everything it illuminates, and the amount of that interaction depends on the energy of the light, which is, in turn, dependent on the color of the light. Blue light is much more energetic than red, and thus more interactive or damaging to the surfaces of furniture. Light bleaches and degrades most components of furniture. Coatings, whether transparent or polychrome, the wood itself, and especially upholstery textiles. Dealing with these problems is relatively simple. When the furniture is not in use, it is best left in the dark. Even when in use and in the light, damage can be reduced through the utilization of curtains, window shades, and screens, which protect the furniture from direct sunlight, and UV filter films, which block the most damaging light frequencies. For extended non-use, such as storage, dust covers are recommended. If the furniture is subject to light while not in use, the dust cover should be opaque. As long as there is light, there will be light damage. But these simple measures can go a long way to reducing potential damage. Keep the curtains drawn and the blinds and shades closed. Use UV filter films on windows. And place opaque dust covers on the furniture when it's not in use. Perhaps the greatest microclimate damage to furniture occurs as the result of wide swings in the relative humidity. This damage occurs because wood is a material that swells or shrinks as the relative humidity rises and falls. It is not homogeneous, which means that it expands and contracts differently along different grain directions. This characteristic of wood exists regardless of its age, whether it is freshly cut from a tree or is thousands of years old from an ancient tomb. Thus, as humidity changes, the components of wooden objects are continually pushing and pulling against each other. This often results in a phenomenon called compression set, whose most common manifestation is either parts of furniture that no longer fit together closely, or parts of furniture that are distorted or broken from their own internal stresses. The wood in furniture is not the only thing to suffer from humidity swings. As they age, most coatings become more inflexible. Since the wood continues to move with humidity changes, and the coating becomes increasingly brittle with time, eventually, humidity fluctuations will cause the coatings to begin fracturing and separating from the wood. This problem becomes particularly severe in cases where the coatings are likely to be less flexible from the start, such as some types of polychrome, or gilding, which is often applied over a rigid ground of plaster called gesso. The response to relative humidity changes begins with determining the annual average relative humidity for your particular climate. What you want to do is keep the relative humidity in the space where your furniture is as close to that average as possible. This can be achieved through your HVAC systems by dehumidifying in the summer and humidifying in the winter. Humidity and temperature have a rough inversion relationship. In other words, if you raise the temperature, you lower the humidity, and vice versa. Since much of the problem with furniture is a result of modern heating systems, which can drive down interior relative humidity in the winter, another option would be to modify the relative humidity by keeping furniture in cooler spaces in the wintertime. This can be done either manually, by turning down the thermostat, or automatically, with a device called a humidistat. Minimizing the damage from an unregulated environment can be accomplished by determining the local relative humidity average and monitoring the relative humidity in the furniture space using a device called a hygrothermograph, and manipulating the relative humidity and temperature through your HVAC to achieve a stable environment. The third and often most overlooked environmental problem is biopredation, or insect infestation, rodent damage, and rot. Insect infestation can destroy a collection of valued furniture in a short time. The best preventive measure to widespread damage is to monitor your collection regularly. If you see piles of insect excrement and wood dust, called frass, under or on your object, it could be an active infestation. Immediately quarantine the suspect object, and if the infestation is confirmed, fumigation will be necessary. Also, increase monitoring of nearby furniture, for the likelihood of further infestation is now greater. Rodents usually do not eat the wood for its own sake, but rather gnaw through it to get to the food on the other side. The best way to deal with this is to not store any foodstuffs, including condiments, in your furniture. Since food also attracts insects, it is a good idea to keep food as far from your collection as possible. Fungal damage, or rot, can only occur in areas of extreme dampness at moderate temperatures. Unless your furniture gets wet and stays wet, this is not normally a severe problem. So, by controlling the light levels, stabilizing relative humidity, and keeping an eye out for insects and fungi, you can reduce greatly the environmental contributions to furniture damage. Which brings us to the second major cause of preventable damage, the way we use and care for our furniture. Obviously, we should be directed by common sense when using furniture we wish to preserve. Here are a few examples. Fire should be kept far from the surface of the object. We should sit only on structures designed for that purpose. Clearly, the drop lid from this desk does not fit that description. Be mindful of what you place on a piece of furniture. organic solvents, such as those in fingernail polish and remover, and alcoholic drinks, can behave as paint and varnish removers on many kinds of coatings. While this appears to be a gathering of conviviality, it is, from the furniture's perspective, a paint-stripping party waiting to happen. Hot items, such as coffee mugs and steaming tureens and irons, can literally melt a finish away. Water, from spills, vases, and cold drink glasses, can damage and deface coatings through blooming, an effect that makes transparent coatings white or milky. This problem can be even worse when the liquid itself stains the surface, such as when coffee or tea is spilled, or if the coating is penetrated and the staining liquid enters the wood itself. Ink and other staining materials should be used with caution. These problems are simple to resolve. Using writing pads, oversized ashtrays, and coasters under beverage containers can virtually eliminate the damage. In addition to using furniture wisely, it's important to handle and lift it carefully. Except when handling metal hardware, do not wear gloves because they can cause you to lose your grip. Remove all jewelry, etc. that could scratch the furniture. And since you are using bare hands when moving furniture, make sure they are clean. Before picking up a piece of furniture, it is critical to first determine how the piece is constructed, what parts of it are removable or detachable. Without doing so, furniture can be seriously damaged through ill-advised handling. Let's look at some examples of moving furniture properly. When moving this drop leaf table, determine which support members move. Is it simply a bracket or a swing leg? Fold the leaves down and restrain them with padding and a tie band. If the support is provided by a swing or gate leg, tie it in place as well. The only safe place to grab a drop leaf table is underneath the end aprons. Grabbing by the legs, especially swing legs, will increase the chance of damage to them. And grabbing by the side leaves will often result in fracturing the long rule joint that allows the leaves to drop. Picking the table up by lifting on the top rather than the apron may break the glue blocks that hold the top to the frame, or strip out the screws which hold the top on. When lifting a chair, go through the same steps. Especially important is to realize that the back is not the strongest part of a chair. The seat rail is. For small chairs, lift by the side seat rails, one hand near the front, the other near the rear. Frequent lifting by the back, especially the crest rail, will eventually result in the breaking of that element. When lifting a large chair or sofa, the rules are the same. Grab underneath the side frame, being sure to lift with your legs rather than your back. While case pieces, especially large ones, may appear very different than tables and chairs, the same rules apply. Again, how is it put together and how can it come apart? Anytime the furniture has handles, with loose or swinging parts, wrap them with padding. This protects the handles, the furniture surface, the movers, and the surroundings in case you bump up against anything. If the carcass is sturdy enough, remove the drawers to lighten the load. Move the drawers separately to the destination. If the drawers provide necessary rigidity to the object, they must be left in place to avoid the twisting stresses that are almost inevitable in moving. While the case piece can be moved similarly to tables and chairs, that is, carrying it carefully by holding on to the bottom structure, it is better to move the piece on a dolly. This is safer for both the movers and the object. The moving project becomes increasingly difficult with objects that are large and complex. Objects that come apart into many pieces or are unwieldy require not only extra care, but also careful preparation. Once you have determined the safest way to pick the furniture up, the next step is moving it safely from where it is to where you want it to go. First, survey the surroundings and determine what you need to move out of the way to have a clear path for the object you are moving. It is vital that there be a clear path not only for the object, but for the mover's feet or the dolly's wheels. Safe handling and moving furniture is a matter of knowing how it goes together and careful planning and preparation for moving. Remember, handle pieces properly. Remove obstacles to safe transport, such as rugs. Employ teamwork between the movers to ensure ease and safety. The guidelines for furniture maintenance are pretty simple. If the furniture is used and handled carefully, it will need very little in the way of routine maintenance. A lot of what furniture conservators do is to respond to problems created by well-intentioned but destructive maintenance or repairs. For the most part, maintaining furniture simply means keeping it clean, carefully. Devices which remove dust can also inflict considerable damage to the object. As in the case of this feather duster, not only pulling the trim out of its groove, but leaving behind a telltale scrap. Sometimes maintaining furniture well simply means being careful while performing housekeeping around the furniture. While this string mop is not necessarily a large problem by itself, it does leave evidence of very careless and perhaps destructive housekeeping habits. The most common maintenance that is appropriate is to keep pieces clean. On wood or coatings, the first and most important step is to evaluate the surface and make sure that the surface or coating is stable and not apt to be damaged by the contact of the cleaning tools. Then, determine what the dirt is and what the surface is. Or if you can't determine that exactly, find out what removes the dirt without affecting the surface underneath it. Often, dust can be removed with the careful wipe of a damp cloth. Oily dirt or waxy residue can be removed with a mild, neutral detergent and water solution, or with mineral spirits. However, it is vital to make sure that the cleaning solution does not affect the underlying surface. If you can define a cleaning method which does this, proceed cautiously. Further protection and aesthetic enhancement can be obtained through the application of a stable, hard furniture polish, such as a paste wax. The hard wax surface can be dusted more easily because it will be more smooth, and the dust will not be embedded in it, as it would be in the unwaxed surface. Waxing need only occur infrequently because the wax itself is not readily removed, and it does not degrade chemically. Waxing too frequently can result in a clouded, built-up surface. While this seems a simple approach, consider the difficulty of employing popular methods of furniture polishing. Oil-based polishes continue to be a vexing problem for furniture conservators, as they polymerize and build up over time and with numerous applications, trapping and adhering airborne dirt into the surface. Traditional polish mixtures of linseed oil, turpentine, beeswax, and vinegar are especially problematic as they polymerize and darken with age. Consider the surface of this clock. The owners, thinking they were helping it out, varnished the surface numerous times to spruce it up. The result is that their benevolence has nearly destroyed this magnificent decoration, for as the varnish aged and deteriorated, it darkened, obscuring the decoration, and crawled or shrunk. In doing so, it pulled the polychrome decoration off the surface. The restoration from this benevolent damage will take hundreds of hours at a cost of tens of thousands of dollars. Dusting upholstery can be accomplished by a vacuum cleaner, using the brush attachment over a screen placed on the surface. Stains and other damage to upholstery should be referred to an upholstery or textile conservator for further treatment. One final consideration of maintenance is reupholstering. Upholstering, by definition, causes some damage to the frame by the tacks and nails driven into it. If repeated, the damage is eventually destructive to the object. A new field in furniture conservation, minimally intrusive upholstery, is dedicated to developing alternative upholstery methods which eliminate or diminish the damage caused by using hundreds or thousands of nails, staples, and tacks in the upholstery process. One never-ending concern of furniture caretakers is for the hardware, which becomes dirty and tarnished with use and exposure to the atmosphere. However, sometimes even this seemingly straightforward process is a poorly informed one. This mount, which has some green copper corrosion, was needlessly damaged by some caretaker who didn't realize that this was not brass, but rather gilded bronze. So polishing it removed the gold, in essence destroying the surface of a beautiful sculptural element. If possible, hardware should be carefully removed from the object, and using proper safety precautions, cleaned in a bath of a 50-50 mix of acetone and alcohol to remove any dirt and oil residue, scrubbing the piece with a soft bristle brush, like a toothbrush. Then, thoroughly dry the hardware with lint-free cloth. After drying, use a very fine abrasive in an alcohol or mineral spirits slurry on a wedge of jeweler's buffing block or a fine lint-free cloth to polish the hardware. Soft cloth is especially good to get into the details of a convoluted surface. When the polishing is completed, wash the hardware thoroughly in a 50-50 mixture of acetone and alcohol to remove all the polishing abrasive, and then dry with lint-free cloth. Using a commercial polishing agent might contribute to the deterioration of the hardware, as they frequently contain harsh cleaners that corrode the metal. The underside of the hardware is especially vulnerable because harsh commercial polish doesn't get cleaned off. To prolong the polishing effect, the surface can be coated with a transparent resin that is sprayed on the hardware. The hardware then can be carefully replaced on the object. If the hardware cannot be safely removed from the furniture and still needs to be cleaned, polished, and coated, it can be done on the object provided the following precautions are scrupulously followed. First, the surface of the object must be protected by a sheet of plastic film, which is slid under the hardware from both sides to form an overlapping barrier that will protect the surface from the cleaning solutions during the polishing process. Without this precaution, attempts to polish the hardware will eventually end in disaster. Since the piece cannot be washed in the acetone alcohol mixture, the cleaning must be done by dipping swabs in the solution and then scrubbing the metal surface with the swab. Polishing must also be done more carefully, perhaps on a smaller scale. Particular care must be used in applying any coating to make sure that no protective varnish for the hardware gets on the object itself. As you can see, furniture maintenance is neither difficult nor complicated. Just remember, be gentle in your housekeeping, be careful when you clean surfaces, be restrained in polishing furniture surfaces and use benign materials, and be cautious in polishing and handling hardware. Make sure to avoid using harsh, damaging commercial polishes. The furniture of our ancestors has reached us through a combination of limited use, accident, benign neglect, and simple good fortune. However, by applying the principles of careful use and proper maintenance illustrated in this video, we can improve the chances of our important artifacts reaching our descendants intact.